As I talk more about how you can hear God's voice or hear the ways that God communicates with you, I really want you to look at this as an adventure and not a test, okay? I don't know about you, but most people do not do well when they're under intense pressure, as in you got to get it right. Think about this instead as, well, what it is, which is a relationship, a warm, inviting relationship. So hearing God is really about connecting with God's heart. And so I'm going to help you in this video to know the myriad of ways that God can and does communicate with you. So in part one of how to hear God's voice, which I'll put the link down below, I talked about some things that are really important for you to believe, your belief system. And when you start believing what's actually true, that God does talk to you, you can hear and do hear God. When you start believing these things, it's going to change and shift how you actually engage in this whole process of enjoyment, of the adventure, of communicating with God. This today, what I'm going to share with you is not an exhaustive list of the different ways, the myriad of ways that God communicates with us. So if you have something to add in addition to what I say, please add it down below. I'm going to have to unpack these later in other subsequent videos. There's just too much in this. But my attempt in this video is just to give you a quick overview and help you understand there's not just one or two ways that God communicates. It's so many ways. And it all depends on you, meaning God has wired you in certain ways. So he actually communicates to you in ways that are going to speak to you. All right. So let's go ahead and get to this. And if you like this video, please click the like, please subscribe so that, and click the bell on that so that you can get notified, okay, when videos come in. All right. So here we go on to the different ways that God communicates. I want to start with a verse from Psalm 27, verse 11 that says this. It says, "Teach me all about your ways and tell me what to do. Make it clear for me to understand." So here's David, who God says, God called David a man after his own heart. Like David was God had a very tender place in his heart for David. And David is saying, God, help me understand. Show me the ways, show me your ways and help me understand. So that's just a great prayer. We're just saying right now, God, show us your ways and help us to understand the various ways in which you're communicating your heart to us. So I want to say, first of all, that God often communicates to us, to you, through our thoughts. Now, right away, some people think, oh, I don't like this because how am I going to know what's God, what's me, what's the enemy, what thoughts are what? And I want to tell you, I'm actually going to deal with that one in part 3. So that part's coming, is how to kind of discern and tell the difference, okay? But for right now, I just want to say God speaks to us through our thoughts. And this is not that God takes over our thoughts. We still can have our own thoughts. But just like a little child is influenced by his parents in a really good way. I'm talking about good, healthy, loving parents. A child learns things and is influenced and starts to see their world partially dependent upon how their parents see the world. And it's very similar to us and God. The more we get to know God's heart, the more we are actually influenced by God's thoughts. So a thought may come across as an idea, a phrase, like you might just be thinking about one thing and suddenly something else that really is in the character, the nature, the heart of God just kind of comes into your thoughts. You might be thinking about a scripture. Maybe you're asking God a question and a scripture comes to mind. Don't just dismiss that as your own thoughts. God is bringing into your thought life the very things that he wants you to ponder. And don't worry, by the way, if you don't feel like you know the Bible, or you've barely read the Bible, or you don't know everything it says, it's okay. This again is the grace and the goodness of God's heart. He doesn't scold you for what you don't know. What he does is he utilizes what you do have, the Bible verses that you do know. He'll just bring those up and right in at a time when you need it, or he'll bring it into a context where it's going to answer a question for you. It's beautiful how God does this. So we're still talking about different ways that God uses our thoughts, or speaks to us, communicates us through thoughts that we think. Okay, another would be a picture. So maybe you just you get an image of something. Maybe you get an image of a bird flying, but it's at a time when you're feeling restless, and suddenly God's helping you to see through a picture, that He wants you to fly and to be free. God does this all the time. In fact, if you see pictures a lot, you actually might have the gift of being a seer, one who kind of sees in the spirit realm a lot. Now this is for another video, but I just want to tell you, some of you, we all are wired differently, and God knows how He made us, and He's going to, one is not better or worse. We are who we are, and God communicates with us based on how He has made us to see things and to experience life in the way that each one of us does uniquely. Okay? So that's one, is God will speak through our thoughts. Another is God will speak through our senses. Now, again, this is not going to be an exhaustive list by any means, but I don't know about you, but I can't tell you how many times I've been looked at something beautiful. I love looking at Lake Tahoe from the mountains, or a waterfall, or, so these beautiful scenes that just, I look right now over the camera and I'm seeing the blue sky out my window, and this majestic tree that's there. That, to me, there's so many times when God is communicating to me who He is, His heart for me, His love for me, through nature, through scenes of things I see. Flowers, animals. God speaks to me all the time through animals. Just 2 days ago, I don't even have to go back very far. Last year, He was talking to me all the time through hummingbirds. I don't have time to share all of the cool stories of what these hummingbirds were doing, but right at a time that it actually, not just that they were there, but what they were doing, God was using to speak to my heart as He was setting me free from more and more things. Just 2 days ago, I've lived where I live for 15 years now, and I've never seen this. Actually, it's happened twice in this week. I've seen a fox. Never seen a fox, and this fox was just trotting by just outside my back gate. And why is that significant? Well, because as I see I that morning I had gone out in my backyard. I had wanted to spend time sitting with God and enjoying His presence. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get caught up in other things. I'm looking at emails, and suddenly my mind is filled and busy, and this fox runs by, and instantly the Lord speaks to my heart through what I just saw. A verse that's in the Song of Songs that says, "Let's catch the little foxes." It's an analogy for getting things out of the way that are distractions to our first love, to Him. And suddenly seeing that one fox, I mean, within I instantly knew what God was saying to me, and a few moments later, pushed everything aside, and I just sat and started to enjoy. And it's all coming back to me now. I just started enjoying God's presence, and suddenly just filled with so much of God's love and kindness and tenderness. And I remembered, oh yeah, this is what I'm alive for. So that all came through a fox. So God could speak through animals. I'm saying how He speaks through our senses. Another way that God communicates is through our taste and our smell. Certain tastes or smells will remind us of things. Sometimes past warm childhood memories, other things that God can use. In fact, there's one in Scripture where Jesus is denied 3 times by Peter. the night of his arrest. He does so, it says, around a charcoal fire. And when Jesus, days later, after his death and resurrection, he goes back and brings Peter back to a charcoal fire to restore Peter, to help Peter to heal from Peter's own disappointment about how he let the Lord down. He brought him back to the same sights and smells, and because a charcoal fire would have a certain smell to it. So that's an interesting place in Scripture where that is. Another would be through what we hear. This, again, is just God speaking through our senses, the things that we hear. And for me, I love music. I especially love just popular music. I grew up through, a lot of my growing up years was like 70s and 80s. So that's a lot of the music I love. But back to the hits of those days. But God still to this day will talk to me through those songs. Such as, let me just give you one example. If you may know the song, "You Are the Sunshine of My Life" by Stevie Wonder. So just think about this, where Jesus would sing to you, "You are the sunshine of my life. That's why I'll always be around." Now, I know Stevie doesn't have anything to worry about. I'm not taking his job, but here's the thing, is when you start listening to songs and listening to the Lord's voice, He will communicate in so many different ways. Also, just a friend's voice, this video. He'll speak to you through other voices, okay? So that's a whole nother way God communicates with us. Another is through our love languages. Now, if you don't know the 5 love languages, I'll put a link down below so you can see what it is. But they are the quality time, physical touch, receiving gifts, words of affirmation, and acts of service. And most of us have one or two that are kind of higher than the others, of ways that we feel most loved when people offer this way of loving us. Well, guess what? You have those preferences because God made you a certain way, and God knows that about you, which is why think about what your love languages are, the top ones are, and start to look for God in those ways. Now, for me, one of mine is a physical touch. And so, but you might be thinking, well, that doesn't work because God doesn't physically touch us. This is what I want to say. For me, God knows how much I need the tangible warmth and like where I just know that I know He's right here. And I experience that quite frequently. Well, I'm wired for that. And there may be other ways that other people experience God that I don't, but that's one of the ways for me is I would say literally, because it is literal, He touches my heart. He kisses my heart. And because He knows that this is something that I need. So this was just a quick overview to let you know there's so many ways that God speaks to you. And it isn't just one or two ways. And so again, as I started with, I want you to see this as an adventure, as a journey of connection, of warmth, of love from a God who is communicating all the time with you, who loves you, who wants you to experience Him. And so this is what I would ask you to consider. In this moment, how is God communicating to me? I want you to ask that question. In this moment, how is God communicating to me? And what I want you to do, because what needs to happen in order to understand how much God's communicating with you, is that you're going to have to be intentional throughout the day at different times to ask that question, because you won't be thinking about it. God can speak to you so many times and in so many ways, and you didn't even know because you weren't really looking for it. So I'm saying one of the things you have to do is start shifting that, being intentional about listening and paying attention. So one of the ways you can do that is multiple times a day, whenever you think about it, just stop and go, wait a minute, in this moment right now, How's God communicating to me? And over time, as you get used to how sweet, truly, how sweet and tender God is to you, you're actually going to realize, oh my goodness, God has been communicating to me all the time. I hope you really enjoy this journey of intimate connection with your Maker, because it's so good.